puppy howled in pain after being abused for a long time. But when a kind stranger heard his plea, the midnight air in suburban Massachusetts carried more than just the usual whispers of late autumn. Emily Chun, exhausted from her 12-hour shift at Boston Memorial Hospital's pediatric ward, should have been fast asleep in her countryside home. Instead, she found herself sitting upright in bed, straining to hear the sound that had jolted her from her near slumber. There it was again, a haunting cry that seemed to embody pure anguish, floating through the darkness like a lost soul's lament. At 35, Emily had witnessed enough suffering in her career as a pediatric nurse to recognize pain in any form. But this sound touched something deeper, something primal in her heart. It wasn't human. It was the cry of an animal in distress, and it had been echoing through the woods behind her property for the past week. Her German shepherd, Luna, lay alert at the foot of the bed, ears pricked forward, dark eyes fixed on the window. Luna had been a companion through Emily's darkest days, including the loss of her parents in a car accident 3 years ago. The dog seemed to share her growing concern about the mysterious cries. "You hear it too, don't you, girl?" Emily whispered, reaching out to scratch behind Luna's ears. The dog's tail thumped once against the bedspread, but her attention remained focused on the window. The digital clock on her nightstand read 11:43 p.m. Outside, the October wind rattled bare branches against the window panes, creating strange shadows in the moonlight. Emily had moved to this remote part of Massachusetts seeking peace after her parents' death, drawn to the quiet dignity of the old farmhouse and its surrounding woods. The property backed up to the abandoned Miller estate, 200 acres of overgrown fields and forgotten buildings that had been tied up in legal disputes for the past decade. Another howl pierced the night, this one carrying such raw desperation that Emily felt tears spring to her eyes. Luna whined softly, looking back at her owner with an expression that seemed to say, "We need to do something." "Okay," Emily said firmly, throwing off her covers. "Enough is enough." She pulled on thick wool socks, sturdy boots, and her warmest coat. Years of winter hospital shifts had taught her the importance of dressing for prolonged exposure to the cold. She grabbed her emergency medical bag, a habit from her early days as a volunteer EMT, and clicked on her industrial-strength flashlight, the kind used by search and rescue teams. Luna was already waiting by the back door, her leash in her mouth. Despite the late hour and the biting cold, there was no question about investigating. Emily had spent her entire life helping others. It was woven into the fabric of her being, as natural as breathing. They stepped out into the crystalline night. The moon hung full and bright overhead, casting everything in silvery shadows. Their breath formed clouds in the frigid air as they made their way toward the tree line. Luna took the lead, her black and tan coat almost invisible in the darkness, moving with the quiet confidence of a dog who knew these woods well from their daily walks. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and frost crunched beneath their feet. Emily checked her phone. Full battery, good signal. She had the local animal controls number on speed dial, though she knew they wouldn't respond until morning. She also had Dr. Sarah Martinez's private number. The local veterinarian had given it to her after Emily had brought in an injured fox she'd found by the roadside last spring. 20 minutes into their search, Luna suddenly stopped, her entire body going rigid. Emily swept her flashlight beam in a wide arc, illuminating the skeletal remains of what had once been a groundskeeper's cottage on the Miller property. The stone foundation was still mostly intact, but the wooden walls had largely rotted away, leaving ghostly frameworks reaching toward the sky. A sound came from within the ruins. Not a howl this time, but a whimper so faint it was almost lost in the wind. Luna's ears swiveled forward, and she took a tentative step toward the structure, then looked back at Emily for guidance. "Hello," Emily called softly, her nurse's training taking over as she assessed the situation. "Is anyone there?" The whimper came again, followed by a terrible sound that made Emily's blood run cold. The harsh rattle of chains against stone. Moving carefully through the debris, Emily directed her flashlight into what remained of the cottage's interior. The beam caught something moving in the far corner, something that made her heart stop for a moment before beginning to race. A dog, no, a puppy, lay huddled against the crumbling stone wall. It was impossible to determine its breed beneath the matted fur and filth, but it couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 months old. A heavy logging chain, crusted with rust, was wrapped multiple times around its neck and secured to an iron ring set deep in the stone foundation. The puppy tried to shrink away from the light, but the chain prevented any real movement. As Emily's eyes adjusted to the scene, the full horror of the situation became clear. The dog was emaciated beyond belief, its ribs clearly visible through patches of missing fur. Open sores marked where the chain had rubbed its neck raw, and old scars crisscrossed its visible skin like a map of sustained cruelty. Luna whined softly beside her, and to Emily's surprise, the chained puppy responded with a tiny tail wag, just the slightest movement, but one that spoke volumes about the resilience of the spirit. "Oh, sweetheart," Emily breathed, her medical training warring with her emotional response. She needed to help this animal, but approaching an injured, frightened dog required caution. One wrong move could make the situation worse for everyone. She set down her medical bag and pulled out a package of beef jerky, a snack she kept on hand during long shifts. The puppy's nose twitched at the smell, and Emily saw its tail move again, a bit stronger this time. "Luna, stay," she commanded softly, and her faithful companion sat obediently, though her eyes never left the chained puppy. Emily began the slow process of approaching the injured animal, talking in a gentle, continuous stream of words. "Hey there, little one. You've been so brave, haven't you? So strong to survive out here all alone. I'm here to help. Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." The puppy watched her approach with eyes that broke Emily's heart. They were a striking blue-gold color, bright with fever but also showing a spark of intelligence and, most remarkably, hope. Despite whatever horrors this animal had endured, it hadn't completely lost its ability to trust. When Emily was about 4 feet away, she unwrapped a piece of jerky, making her movements slow and deliberate. The puppy's tail wagged again, more noticeably this time, though it remained pressed against the wall. "That's right, sweetie. I'm not going to hurt you. Would you like some food? You must be so hungry." It took nearly 30 minutes of patient coaxing before Emily could get close enough to touch the puppy. When she finally made contact, running her hands gently over its trembling frame, she had to bite back tears. She could feel every bone under her fingers, and the dog's temperature was dangerously high. But instead of pulling away from her touch, the puppy leaned into it ever so slightly, as if starved for gentle contact as much as food. The chain was secured with a heavy padlock, but the iron ring it was attached to had begun to rust out of the stone. Emily returned to her medical bag and retrieved a small pry bar, another remnant of her EMT days. It took 20 minutes of careful work, during which the puppy remained perfectly still, as if understanding she was trying to help. When the ring finally came free, Emily gently unwound the chain, revealing even more damage underneath. The puppy stood on shaking legs, took one tentative step toward her, then collapsed. Without hesitation, Emily shrugged off her coat and wrapped the dog in it. Luna moved closer, gently sniffing the bundle before looking up at Emily with worried eyes. "It's okay, girl. We're going to help this little one." The walk back to the house seemed to take hours, though it couldn't have been more than 30 minutes. Emily carried the puppy, who weighed far too little for its size, while Luna led the way, constantly looking back to check on them. Under the bright lights of her kitchen, Emily's medical training took over. She cleaned the worst of the wounds with antiseptic, carefully documenting everything with photos on her phone. The puppy barely flinched during the treatment, watching her with those remarkable eyes that seemed too wise for its young age. A closer examination revealed the puppy was male and, beneath the dirt and matted fur, appeared to be some mix of Siberian Husky and perhaps Australian Shepherd. His calm demeanor during treatment suggested he had once been someone's pet before whatever nightmare had led him to that abandoned cottage. Emily called Dr. Martinez, who answered despite the late hour. After hearing the situation, the vet agreed to meet them at the clinic immediately. "I'll text you everything I've documented so far," Emily said, already gathering supplies to transport the puppy. He's severely malnourished and running a high fever, multiple lacerations and possible infected wounds from the chain. Bring him in right away, Dr. Martinez replied, her voice grim. And Emily? Thank you for not waiting until morning. The next few weeks tested every ounce of Emily's medical knowledge and emotional strength. The puppy, whom she named Atlas, after the titan who carried the weight of the world, was in worse condition than they had initially thought. X-rays revealed multiple healed fractures suggesting long-term abuse. He was battling several infections, and his malnutrition had affected his organ function. Whoever did this, Dr. Martinez said one evening, reviewing Atlas's latest blood work, they wanted him to suffer. This wasn't neglect, it was deliberate cruelty. The local police investigated, but with no witnesses and no security cameras in the area, they had little to go on. Detective James Rodriguez, however, took a special interest in the case. Animals abusers often escalate to humans, he explained to Emily during one of his follow-up visits. And the level of cruelty here, we need to find whoever did this. Atlas's recovery was a journey measured in small victories. The first time he managed to keep down solid food. The day his fever finally broke. The morning he wagged his tail without trembling. Each milestone was celebrated by the growing network of people invested in his survival. Luna proved to be an invaluable part of his rehabilitation. She seemed to understand instinctively what Atlas needed, whether it was space, comfort, or encouragement. She showed him how to trust the world again, one small step at a time. Emily took a leave of absence from the hospital, using her saved vacation time to focus on Atlas's care. Her colleagues from the pediatric ward, understanding her need to heal this broken soul, covered her shifts without complaint. Many of them stopped by with supplies, advice, or simply to sit with Atlas and talk to him, knowing from their work with traumatized children the importance of gentle human contact. The first major breakthrough came 3 weeks after his rescue. Emily was sitting on the floor of her living room, reviewing patient files, when she felt a slight pressure against her leg. Looking down, she found Atlas had voluntarily left his bed to lie beside her. His head wasn't quite touching her, but he was closer than he'd ever chosen to be before. Moving very slowly, Emily set aside her work and began to softly sing, an old lullaby her mother used to sing to her, the same one she now used to comfort her youngest patients. Atlas's eyes drifted closed, and for the first time since his rescue, he fell into a peaceful sleep without whimpering or twitching from nightmares. As winter deepened outside, Atlas's physical wounds began to heal. His fur grew back thick and lustrous, revealing a stunning mix of gray, white, and black, with one blue eye and one gold. A living reminder that beauty could emerge from the darkest circumstances. He gained weight and strength, though he remained leaner than typical for his breed mix. The emotional healing took longer. Atlas was terrified of men, particularly those wearing work boots similar to the ones that had likely kicked him. Loud noises would send him into a panic, and the sight of anything resembling a chain would make him shut down completely. Detective Rodriguez, understanding the importance of helping Atlas overcome his fear of men, began making regular visits. He would sit quietly in Emily's living room, reading a book or working on reports, never making demands or even looking directly at Atlas, just being in the presence of a man who meant him no harm. Gradually, Atlas began to show interest in the detective, watching him from across the room, then from progressively closer distances. The day Atlas finally took a treat from Rodriguez's hand, the tough detective had to wipe away tears. "You know," Rodriguez said, watching Atlas retreat to his bed with the treat, "in my line of work, you see a lot of darkness, but moments like this, they remind you that light always finds a way back in." As Atlas grew stronger, Emily began taking him and Luna on short walks around the property. At first, Atlas would freeze at every unexpected sound, pressing against Emily's legs for protection. But Luna's confident presence helped him navigate the world beyond the safety of the house. One crisp morning in January, during their walk, they encountered Kevin Sullivan, Emily's elderly neighbor who had been away visiting family. Atlas normally retreated from strangers.